Some of the most surprising words that the Apostle Paul writes are found in his letter to the church at Ephesus at the very end of the letter. But to understand why those words are surprising, you really need to go back to the book of Acts. And when you read the book of Acts, one of the words that is used to describe the proclamation of the gospel in the early church is the word bold. Boldness, fearlessness, courageousness, all frequently used words to describe how the apostles and other church leaders were proclaiming the good news to those around them. In fact, Luke ends the book of Acts with this description of the apostle Paul, that he proclaimed the gospel with all boldness. What about you? Would words like boldness, fearlessness, courageousness be words that would be appropriate to describe your proclamation, your telling others the good news of Jesus Christ? For many of us, they wouldn't. When asked why we're often so reserved about sharing our faith with others, the answer usually finds its root in the idea of fear. Afraid of what somebody might say, afraid of somebody asking a question that we can't answer, fearful about tension that it could cause in a relationship, or even just fearful in our own abilities to share the gospel with others. Which all of that sort of makes what Paul says at the end of Ephesians so surprising. Paul is writing to the church at Ephesus, and at the very end of the letter, when he's sort of closing things out, he makes this request to the church at Ephesus in Ephesians 6, verses 19 and 20. He says, "Pray also for me, that whenever I speak, my words may be given me so that I will fearlessly make known the mystery of the gospel, for which I am an ambassador in chains. Pray that I may declare it fearlessly as I should." Twice in those two verses, he requests prayer for boldness, for fearlessness. Fearlessness? He seemed to have that in abundance. That's not what I would have thought Paul would have requested prayer for. But the fact that his prayer request is for boldness and for fearlessness, it's both informative and comforting. You know, maybe his bold proclamation of the gospel wasn't connected to his abilities or to his knowledge or to his eloquence in speaking or his position or the influence that he had. Maybe his fearlessness, maybe his boldness was connected to something else, to the power of the Spirit working through and in him, and the power of the message that he was called to deliver. And I just find that to be a comforting and motivating thought. That the evangelist Paul, who we would say was bold and fearless in abundance, wasn't bold and fearless because of his skills or his wiring. And we don't have to be either. You know, here's what I know. I know the world needs to hear the hope of the gospel of Jesus Christ. As Christ followers, you and I have the best news ever. And it is time for fear and timidity to stop being the things that keep it locked up inside. You know, I wonder what might happen if our Christian communities, our small groups, our Bible study fellowships started praying Ephesians 6 for each other. Praying for boldness and for fearlessness. I imagine those would be prayers that God would be anxious to answer. And I wonder what might happen in us If we started to believe that our fearless proclamation of the gospel of Jesus Christ doesn't have to come from within, but rather comes from our dependence on the power of the Spirit and the power of the message that we've been called to deliver, man, what might that change in us? The world around you and I needs Jesus and needs to hear the gospel. Pray, Ephesians 6, that we too may declare it fearlessly as we should.